You've been called too intense, too deep, mysteriously accurate, maybe even psychic, which is hilarious because you're not floating candles around your bedroom. You're just observant and strategic and allergic to nonsense. So let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone for the first time and within like 15 seconds, you knew exactly how the next 6 months of their life would go? Not because you're judging them. You're not judging. You're simply running a mental background check with a level of efficiency that would make the FBI say, okay, relax. That's what I'm calling the Minerva Instinct. The Minerva Instinct is a name for that INFJ-flavored reflex, a mix of wisdom, pattern recognition, and strategic restraint. Basically, your brain's habit of turning chaos into a clean map. It's inspired by Minerva, the Roman goddess associated with wisdom, strategy, and skilled craft. So the concept pulls from that archetype. Not loud power, but calm, calculated insight that acts before it performs. Minerva. Wisdom, strategy, calm power. Not loud, not flashy, not look at me. More like, I already saw this coming, I already planned for it, and I'm not going to argue with you about it. And if you're an INFJ, you're probably sitting there like, okay, why does this feel uncomfortably accurate? Good. Because this video is not here to flatter you, it's here to expose you. And yes, this is going to start debates in the comments, because anytime you describe INFJs accurately, somebody shows up to say, actually, I'm an INFJ and I don't do that. And then you check their profile and their bio says, chaos, unhinged, don't text me. So, we'll proceed. Let's dive right in. All right, first up, you teach without trying. People come to you for advice, not because you're the loudest in the room, and definitely not because you're out here doing motivational speeches in the group chat. They come to you because you have this terrifying talent for saying the one thing that makes everything else finally make sense. You don't just give opinions, you give clarity. It's like everyone else is standing in a fog with a flashlight pointed at their own face, and you're the only one calmly saying, hey, the exit is over there. You cut through confusion so cleanly that people feel both grateful and slightly exposed. Because your advice isn't fluffy, it's surgical. And here's the Minerva part. You don't teach by trying to be a teacher. You teach by how you notice things. You notice what people avoid. You notice what they repeat. You notice the gap between what they say they want and what their choices keep proving. That's not being judgmental. That's pattern recognition with emotional intelligence attached. Psychologically, this is what happens when your brain is wired to track meaning, motive, and consequence at the same time. Most people listen to respond. You listen to decode. And when you speak, it's not random. Your words land because they're built from a whole invisible chain of observations you've been collecting for weeks. That's why people say, I don't know why, but talking to you calms me down. It's not magic. It's the fact that your presence communicates, I see the whole situation, and we're not going to lie about it. You make chaos feel organized. You make emotions feel understandable. You make people feel like their inner mess has a translation. But the funny part is, you'll still act surprised when people treat you like the unofficial life coach of the universe. Someone messages you, quick question, and you already know it's not quick. And it's not a question. And you're about to be handed a 40-slide emotional PowerPoint. And you do help because you care. But you also quietly wonder why you keep getting assigned this role like it's a cosmic group project and you're the only one who reads the instructions. That's the Minerva instinct in everyday life. Quiet leadership, accidental mentoring, and a brain that naturally turns confusion into a clean, honest answer. And if you've ever felt guilty for being too blunt or too intense or too real, here's the truth. You're not harsh. You're just accurate. People don't come to you for comfort. They come to you for the kind of truth that actually changes something. And next up, You can smell incompetence in 60 seconds. You walk into a conversation, someone starts talking with confidence, and your brain immediately goes, "Oh no!" Not because you're negative, not because you're arrogant, but because you can hear the gaps. You can hear when someone's logic is held together with duct tape and motivational quotes. And it happens fast. 60 seconds is generous. Sometimes it's 12. You notice the little tells, vague answers, big claims with zero specifics. Trust me, bro energy. And that weird thing people do where they use complicated words to hide the fact they're not saying anything. It's like watching someone try to flex in a language they don't speak. Respectfully, it's painful. Here's the controversial part. You usually don't call it out. You don't argue, you don't humiliate them, you just mentally demote them. Your internal system quietly updates, this person is not a reliable narrator. This person is a liability. This person should not be trusted with anything sharp, fragile, or emotionally important. And psychologically, this is not being mean. This is pattern detection plus risk assessment. INFJs, especially the analytical kind, tend to track consistency, competence, and intent because you're always scanning for what's stable and what's performative. Your mind wants structure and truth, so when someone's vibe is all confidence and no substance, it sets off alarms like a car with 12 warning lights and a driver saying, "It's fine." Also, let's be honest, you've probably been gaslit by incompetence before. Someone swore they knew what they were doing, and you believed them. And then you watch the entire situation collapse like a cheap folding chair. So now your Minerva Instinct doesn't just look for intelligence, it looks for integrity of thinking. Can they explain it clearly? Can they take feedback? Can they admit uncertainty without melting down? Those are the real markers. And this is where people misunderstand you. They think you're being judgmental, but what you're actually doing is protecting time, energy, and outcomes. Because you're not impressed by swagger, you're impressed by clarity, competence, and accountability, the Holy Trinity. So when you meet someone who's loud, confident, and wrong, you don't fight them. You just step back, smile politely, and let life handle the performance review. Because deep down you already know, reality is undefeated, and incompetence always gets audited. Next, the Minerva Instinct is quiet dominance. You're not the loudest person in the room. You're not fighting for attention. You're not interrupting. You're not performing your personality like it's an audition. And somehow, people still feel you. That's the thing. Your presence has weight. Even when you're doing absolutely nothing, except blinking and observing, like a calm predator in a documentary. This is what I mean by quiet dominance. It's not alpha energy. It's not chest-thumping confidence. It's calm authority. You don't need to prove anything because you're not running on approval. You're running on clarity, timing, and precision, and that's way more unsettling than someone who needs to win every sentence. You win by not rushing. You pause before you speak. You listen like you're collecting evidence. And when you finally say something, it's not a stream of words, it's a verdict. People walk away replaying your sentence like it was a plot twist. Not because you were dramatic, because you were accurate. Here's the psychological twist. Your dominance comes from self-regulation. Most people broadcast their internal state. They leak insecurity, hunger for validation, panic, impatience. You don't. You contain it. You manage your facial expressions like you're trained in emotional stealth. And the human brain reads that as power, because the person who can stay calm usually has the most control over the situation. That's why people sometimes feel controlled around you, even when you're not controlling them. Your stillness forces them to feel their own chaos. They start talking more, explaining more, justifying more. It's like your silence becomes a mirror, and they don't like what they see, so they start filling space. Meanwhile, you're just sitting there like, interesting. Tell me more about why you're suddenly defending yourself. And yes, sometimes people will try to provoke you. They'll test you with little jabs, passive-aggressive comments, emotional bait. They want you to react because if you react, they can finally put you in a box. See? You're emotional too. But you don't bite. You stay calm, you stay precise, you stay unreadable. And that's when they realize the truth. You're not playing the same game. Because Minerva energy isn't about being loud. It's about being inevitable. You don't dominate by force. You dominate by seeing the whole board and moving like you already know the ending. And next, the truth spike. One sentence that ends the illusion. You have this reputation for being patient, calm, understanding. The person who doesn't get bothered. And honestly, that's because you can tolerate a lot. You can watch people spiral, posture, perform, and contradict themselves without reacting. Because your mind isn't in the moment. It's in the pattern. You let things slide, not because you don't notice, but because you're collecting data. You're watching what repeats. You're tracking what they deny. You're measuring the gap between what they say and what their behavior keeps confessing. And while everyone else thinks, oh, they're fine, you're quietly building a mental file labeled, this is who you really are. Then it happens. The line gets crossed. It's not always a big dramatic betrayal either. Sometimes it's one small, disrespectful move, one lazy lie, one too familiar manipulation, one moment where they assume you're not paying attention. And that's when the Minerva instinct flips from observer to executioner of illusion. You drop the truth spike. One sentence. Clean. Accurate. No yelling. No insult. No emotional mess. Just a single statement that hits like a courtroom verdict. Something like, you don't actually want honesty, you want control, or you only respect people when they're useful to you. And suddenly, the whole dynamic is exposed under fluorescent lighting. People call it savage because they're used to conflict looking like noise. But you don't do noise, you do precision. Your truth is so sharp because it's not based on one moment, it's based on the entire timeline. You're not reacting, you're concluding. Psychologically, this is what happens when someone with high empathy finally reaches cognitive closure. You don't snap because you're impulsive. You snap because your internal system has decided the evidence is sufficient. That's why your delivery is calm. It's not an outburst, it's a decision. And the funniest part, after you say it, you're not even shaking. You're not spiraling. You're just peaceful. Because the illusion was exhausting you. The ambiguity was loud. And truth is quiet. Truth feels like finally turning off a buzzing light you didn't realize was ruining your nervous system. So, if you've ever wondered why people act stunned after you say one sentence, it's because you didn't just speak. You ended a story they were hoping you'd keep believing. Next, your standards aren't high. They're specific. People love to accuse you of having high standards, like you're sitting on a throne rejecting applicants for the position of friend. But that's not what's happening. Your standards aren't high, they're specific. You're not asking for perfection. You're asking for integrity. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. Because integrity is annoying. Integrity doesn't let you hide behind charm. Integrity doesn't care about excuses. Integrity asks one simple question. Do your actions match your words? And if the answer is no, your nervous system notices before your brain even finishes being polite. You're not demanding everything. You're demanding core things: consistency, accountability, emotional honesty, the basics. But in a world where people want credit for trying, basics start looking like luxury. So when you say, hey, I need honesty, people hear, wow, so you think you're better than me? No, You just don't want to build trust on a foundation made of wet cardboard. Here's the psychological twist. Your specificity comes from how your mind tracks patterns over time. You're not evaluating someone based on one mistake. You're evaluating the direction of their character. You can forgive a slip. You can't live inside a loop. If someone keeps repeating the same harmful behavior while rebranding it as a misunderstanding of truth, you don't call that complicated. You call that data. And this is where it gets controversial. Your standards make people feel exposed because they remove wiggle room. Some people survive socially by staying vague, keeping things undefined, and never being fully accountable. You don't allow that. You ask clarifying questions, you notice contradictions, you remember what they said last time. You are basically a walking terms and conditions page for human behavior, and they hate it. But also, let's be honest, you're not rigid for no reason. You've probably learned the hard way that when you lower your standards, you don't become more open-minded, you become more drained. You end up carrying the relationship, translating their emotions, making excuses for their inconsistencies, and then wondering why you feel tired around someone who claims they care so much. So your specificity is self-protection. It's Minerva Instinct logic. Wisdom isn't just knowing what's right, it's choosing what's safe, what's stable, and what's worth your energy. And if someone can't meet the basics, you don't punish them. You just stop offering front row access to your life. Next, you treat conversations like strategy meetings. You don't just talk, you analyze while you talk. You'll be nodding, smiling, acting normal, while your brain is quietly running a full internal report. Why did they say it like that? Why now? What do they want from me? It's not paranoia. It's your mind doing what it always does, turning a conversation into a map. Most people communicate to express. You communicate to solve. You're not collecting words, you're collecting intent. Tone shifts, vague answers, over-explaining, random jokes that feel a little too defensive, you clock it. And that's why people feel deeply understood around you, and also slightly nervous, like you're an emotional MRI machine that didn't ask for consent. Psychologically, this is layered listening. You hear the spoken conversation, the emotional conversation, and the conversation they're trying to avoid. So when you ask a simple question, something like, what do you actually need right now? It hits them like a plot twist, because you just bypassed the performance and went straight to the root. And here's the controversial part. You're not doing this to control people. You do it because your mind hates wasted communication. Small talk is fine for about 45 seconds. After that, it starts feeling like chewing gum with no flavor. So you naturally steer things toward clarity. What's the real issue? What's the pattern? What's the next best move? That's the Minerva instinct. Wisdom plus strategy, calmly guiding the conversation through fog while everyone else is debating the vibe. And finally, you live between worlds. You live in this strange split-screen reality where one part of you is hyper-logical and the other part of you is pure intuition. You can analyze a situation like a detective with a spreadsheet, and then, 5 minutes later, you're like, I don't know how I know this, I just know. Daydreaming. Spirituality. Duality. You're basically a walking paradox with good manners. INFJs often feel torn between the practical world and the symbolic one. In the practical world, you're expected to be simple, direct, and normal. In your inner world, everything has meaning, tone has meaning, timing has meaning, silence has meaning, even the way someone says, "I'm fine," has meaning. And yes, it's exhausting because you're not just living life, you're reading the director's commentary of life. This is where the Minerva instinct shows up as a stabilizer. Minerva energy doesn't force you to pick a side. It holds the tension. It lets you be both intellectual and mystical without collapsing into chaos. You can respect evidence and still trust your inner signal. You can love psychology and still feel the spiritual undercurrent of people. You can say, "Oh, Show me the facts, while also thinking, but why does my gut feel like this is a trap? And it's controversial because people don't like that combination. Logical people think you're too intuitive. Intuitive people think you're too analytical. You end up feeling like you don't fully belong anywhere because you're fluent in both languages. You can talk about patterns, motives, and behavior like a researcher, then turn around and describe a feeling like it's a weather system moving through your chest. So if you've ever felt like you're split in two, you're not broken. You're balanced in a way most people aren't. The Minerva Instinct is that internal bridge, keeping your wisdom sharp, your intuition grounded, and your mystery disciplined. And honestly, that's why you're hard to manipulate. You're not just smart. You're smart, and you can feel what's real. If you felt even slightly called out by the Minerva Instinct, drop a comment with which chapter hit you the hardest. I want to see the debates and the replies. Hit like if this was painfully accurate, and subscribe if you want more personality breakdowns that feel like a psychological documentary, but with a little chaos.